Good afternoon and welcome to your main newscast right here on Kaieteur Radio 99.1 and 99.5 FM. My name is Josh Van Slykeman and these are the top stories we're tracking. Over 2,500 new COVID-19 cases and 63 deaths recorded in August alone. Guyana walking slippery slope with failure to determine final price tags for gas project, according to international analysis. Bosai employee burned to death in company's compound. Oprah jailed for robbing man who refused to do sexual transaction with him. Employees placed on bail for stealing sardines and coconut milk. 92 out of 938 schools scheduled to reopen fully in September and others to operate on rotational basis. And no more excuse, all countries must step up fight against climate change, according to UN advisor. And Pandit beaten to death for reprimanding drunken men's behavior while 11 in custody. Stay tuned to stay informed.
I'm in a rush.
Here on Kaieteur Radio 99.1 and 99.5 FM. Let's get to the news in details. To ensure taxpayers are not heavily burdened with repairing the development costs of the continuous gas-to-energy project, Arthur Deacon, an international analyst and co-director of energy practice at America's Market Intelligence, is calling for the PPPC government to have a consensus on the final price tag of this project. This, he asserted, will guard against the cost overruns, which have the potential to be in the billions of dollars. Deacon went on to indicate that AMI has not looked at cost overruns for Guyana's estimated $900 million gas project. On that same token, he referred to cost overruns in Latin America, particularly in neighboring Brazil, and the corruption which engulfed the same. It is of this paper on this subject that the Center for Public Integrity noted that initial estimates of capital costs for large petroleum projects are almost never correct. Meanwhile, advisors to the Secretary General and Assistant Secretary General of the Climate Action Team at the United Nations, Selwyn Hart, has issued a call for all global governments to take bolder, ambitious actions to fight climate change and achieve net zero emission by 2050. Hart said the evidence that greenhouse gases from fossil fuel burning and deforestation are contributing to global warming is irrefutable. Further to this, he pointed out that these events have placed the lives of billions of people, animals, and ecosystems at risk. Although he called on all countries to play their part, the assistant UN advisor was keen to emphasize that wealthier countries must support resilient building and adaptation into smaller, less developed countries. Further to this, Hart pointed out that third world countries, which are not the biggest contributors to emissions, often suffer from the brunt of climate change. You're listening to us right here on Kaieteur Radio 99.1 and 99.5 FM, and this is your main newscast on the radio with a difference. We thank you for joining us. We continue with your news. Guyana's Chief Investment Officer, Dr. Peter Ramsarup, recently disclosed that Guyana was the quote-unquote showcase of the Offshore Technology Conference, which was held in Houston, Texas from August 16th to 19th. Dr. Ramsarup noted that the keynote speeches delivered by Guyana's Vice President Dr. Bharat Jagyo on the oil industry and the environment were well received. He further stated that since the oil and gas industry was a key point of interest at the conference, Guyana was able to take advantage of that excitement and use it to market other sectors. Dr. Ramsarup reported witnessing many memorandum of understandings being signed between local private sector representatives and foreign investors. This is your main newscast on Kaieteur Radio 99.1 and 99.5 FM. More news after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us, and we continue with the news in details. Following his efforts to ward off a group of men who were imbibing and behaving in a disorderly fashion in front of his home, a pandit and joiner of Crabwood Creek lost his life after the said men struck him to death with pieces of wood. Dead is Rishi Bharat, called Harubi, of Crabwood Creek, Upper Quarantine, Berbice. Bharat had ventured out of his home at approximately 22 hours 15 on Saturday to confront the men who were imbibing opposite his home on a bridge. The 60-year-old had gone there after the men were using indecent language and behaving in a disorderly manner. However, things got out of hand and an argument erupted, and the group of men armed themselves with pieces of wood and battered Bharat until he was no longer moving. His family saw his lifeless body in the ground, rushed him to the Skeldon Hospital, where he was pronounced dead on arrival. Investigations into the tragic incident are ongoing, and 11 persons remain in custody. With the reopening of schools set for September 6, 92 out of some 938 public schools across the country are scheduled to reopen their doors for full face-to-face learning, while the remaining 846 are slated to reopen on a rotational basis. The reopening of schools was on Friday announced by senior officials from the Ministry of Education during a press briefing at the National Center for Education Resource Development. Announcing the reopening of schools at the nursery level was the Assistant CEO of the Ministry of Education, Samantha Williams, who stated that 41 out of the 348 nursery schools will open their doors to full face-to-face engagement for learners, while the other 307 will operate on a rotational system. This rotational system will see Year 1 and Year 2 learners attending school on different days. To facilitate opening a nursery school, Williams said each school was guided and encouraged to prepare individualized operational plans which contained the availability of space, the numbers of students, and teaching staff. Sherwin Anthony, popularly known as Opera of James Street, Alboystown, Georgetown, was on Friday jailed after he pleaded guilty to robbing a man who had refused to do business with him. The 33-year-old male sex worker pleaded guilty to the charge, which stated that on August 21 at Cornhill Street, Georgetown, while in the company of others and armed with a cutlass, he robbed Cornwell Rose, one gold and silver cricket band, one Amazon electrical tablet, a jackhammer, and a Samsung Galaxy SJ7 cellular phone, a knife, and $100,000 in cash, totaling $305,500. Ross told investigators that the defendant had called 4 males who immediately surrounded him, one of whom was armed with a cutlass, and as such, being fearful for his life, he handed over his ring, band, knife, and tablet. One of the suspects then held onto the victim's jackhammer that he was carrying and relieved him of same. 3 alleged sardine and coconut milk thieves were on Friday placed on $250,000 bail when they appeared in the Georgetown Magistrates Court to answer to the break-and-enter and larceny charge, which alleged that they broke into the barn of their former workplace. and stole over $7 million in items. Those charged are 52-year-old Milton Barnwell, 28-year-old Prakash Hemchan, and 29-year-old Mark Balprasad. The trio appeared before Senior Magistrate Leron Dali, who read the charge to them. The men pleaded not guilty to the charge. And meanwhile, an employee with Bosai Mineral Group, a Chinese bauxite company based in Linden, was reportedly burnt to death yesterday. He has been identified as 39-year-old Kira Robertson of Central Amelia's Ward Linden. Robertson worked as a plant operator with the company and its operation located along Republic Avenue, Mackenzie Linden. Around 6 hours yesterday, his colleague reportedly heard him screaming, and when they looked into his direction, the man was seen completely engulfed in flames and running around in the compound. One of them managed to extinguish the flames that were consuming his body and was rushed to the Linden Hospital complex, where he died 2 hours later while receiving treatment. It is unclear what caused the plant operator to die such a tragic death, but police investigators are currently on the ground trying to ascertain the case. It is 12 hours 36 in Guyana, and right across the Eastern Caribbean, we turn our attention to your COVID-19 update. While it is unfortunate that some healthcare workers are not unvaccinated, Minister of Health Dr. Frank Anthony was keen to note that he is confident the state of affairs will change soon. The minister explained that over the past 2 weeks, the senior staff members at the Georgia Public Hospital and the Linden Hospital Complex have been working to educate the healthcare workers at the various hospitals on the importance of being vaccinated. The minister said that he is confident in the unvaccinated nurses and others, and noted that as persons in the health field, they understand the science behind the vaccines. For this reason, too, he encouraged the hesitant healthcare workers to think within the training they have instead of doing so emotionally. And out of the 25,323 confirmed COVID-19 cases recorded in Guyana since the pandemic started in March last year, some 2,555 persons tested positive from August 1 to 27 alone. An analysis done by Kaieteur shows that in that period as well, a total of 63 persons lost their life after falling victims to the deadly disease. Most of them were women. During this period too, specifically on August 24th, the Ministry of Health recorded 207 new cases, making that the highest number of cases recorded within a 24-hour period than that any other day for the month thus far. The least numbers of new cases recorded on a single day was August 8, which had 12 cases. Seven of the Kaieteur News that is dedicated of being blunt. The Guardian newspaper recently highlighted that ExxonMobil plans to use Corexit 9500, a toxic chemical that was banned in the UK, to treat an unmitigated oil spill that may occur offshore Guyana. Quoted international renowned disaster expert Robert B., the news agency reported that the use of this chemical poses severe danger to the nation's health and marine life. One therefore has to ask why Exxon, with all of its oil industry knowledge, is so thoughtless, even reckless, to include this high harmful chemical as part of its oil spill response plan. Is it that the lives of Guyanese do not matter? If the Vice President Barrett Jagger is genuine about holding Exxon accountable, he now has sufficient grounds to express extreme indications that the company would include this radioactive chemical in its already shaky response plans for Guyana. And with that, we've come to the end of your main newscast right here on Kaieteur Radio 99.1 and 99.5 FM. Let me remind you that coming up immediately after this is going to be time for a message on the oil and gas sector by publisher of the Kaieteur News, Mr. Glenn Lal, and after which we will bring to you the national outlook with GHK Lal. Coming up at 13 hours, Rihanna Ramsey joins us for Your Health Matters.